Teresa.
And I'm Callista, and this is Culprit. And I think it originally came out in March, but we just finished the limited series Imperfect Women on Apple TV, and we have some thoughts that we wanted to share.
Uh, Love Kerry Washington. She can be in anything, even she's been in quite a few things that I haven't loved the show, but I like her. I think she's a really good actress.
Yeah, no, I really like her, and she was, I wouldn't say, well, I guess favorite character out of the ones there were, although I didn't really love anyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, yeah, maybe she was my favorite character out of the three, but yeah, it is based on a book, isn't it? I
I think so.
think. Yeah. I mean, yeah, nobody was really likable, and we can go ahead and say now that you were right and I was wrong because I don't think we won't get spoilers because it's not like it came out years ago. But there's a person that has been in other shows. We liked him too. He was in Billions, but and I thought, "Oh, he seems like he's gonna be okay, he's gonna be okay," and you're like, "Mm, I don't know," and then, nailed it, so I guess it is a spoiler, nailed it, you were, completely right, you were, like, 3,000% right, 'cause he wasn't just a little bit bad, he was, like, real, real bad, so, I was just I guess I was hoping for let's give somebody the benefit of the doubt, maybe this male character will be decent, but, it's asking
Yeah.
for too much.
I mean, yeah, I felt, well, it starts out like, he's just gonna be a little bad. You know, I guess this is, yeah, so kind of a spoiler, like by cheating, but then, we escalate from that pretty quickly. And I know even before that the affair, I think that's pretty general, began, you're like, oh, I think, these two people are just gonna be friends, and that's great. That's good for them. And I'm like, they're not doing anything yet. Like, I think your faith in humanity was just too high at that moment.
I don't know, it must have caught me on an off day because generally it is not. So, yeah, and this is bad, and I know that this does not translate to real life. Well, I mean, sometimes it does, but not all the time, but he is working as a professor, and ding, 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 ding. I mean, how many, books, shows, somebody's a professor and, do they just are they married to somebody for 30 years? Or wait, do they, have affairs with their students and stuff? Yeah.
I know. It's like, it is a cliche, and, obviously, there are lots of professors in the real world who do not do so, but, in fiction, either whether that be in books or shows, it does seem to happen quite frequently.
It does. It's kinda like a little built-in trope, "Oh, we'll make him a professor." Yeah. But, yeah, I didn't really love any of the characters. Somebody, gets murdered. I mean, maybe several people get murdered. One of the main characters that gets murdered, I didn't love them, and I feel bad about that, but, it is fiction, so
Yeah, I think we can say because, it happened pretty early on, there's, like, 3 main female protagonists, and they've been friends, I think, since, like, college for a good amount of time, and one of them is murdered, and, it's titled Imperfect Women, so, obviously, like people in real life, they're not perfect, but I did find it hard to like, I forget the names of the characters, so Kate Mara and Elizabeth Moss, I think maybe just because I like Kerry Washington, I found it easier to like her character, although she, of course, also made some questionable choices.
yeah, yeah. Mary, I think, was Elizabeth
Mm.
Moss, and I think Nancy was Kate
Yes, yeah.
Mara. Yeah, and I haven't seen Kate Mara in a lot, and, I like her on a non-professional basis, I kinda like her lifestyle and what she stands for, but, yeah, I mean, yeah, they met in college, and their paths have, definitely went in different directions, but they're just, yeah. And again, you can be a victim of something and not have a perfect life.
Yeah.
Victims don't need to be perfect, obviously. But yeah, it was hard to, yeah, it was hard to like any of them. But,
Yeah.
I think it was done well. I think it was done well. And again, like Kerry Washington and can't remember his name, Joel Kinna. I don't care. It starts with a K, like Kinnemar, whatever. I saw him years ago in The Killing, and I know you didn't see that.
Uh-uh.
But I haven't seen him in anything in a long time. So I didn't love his character. But again, I could say it a couple more times. But I think he did a good job too. So,
You know, I think everyone did a good job, but I think actually Kerry Washington's character's name was Eleanor.
there you
Uh,
go. Yeah.
but yeah, I did although I will, say Kerry Washington, Eleanor was my favorite. I obviously found it easier to sympathize with the female characters than the male characters just because, they were coming from either quite a privileged background or a really high sense of entitlement. So, even though the female characters, as we all do, made questionable decisions, I could understand more where each of them was coming from.
Yeah. Agree. And again, didn't like Mary Elizabeth Moss's character. But I really sympathize with her reasoning for, well, what she ends up doing and maybe why she stays in a situation that wasn't benefiting her. And, you could always just throw in there are kids involved. So I know a lot of people in real life and in books and shows, stay for the children. So,
Yeah. And I felt like I really felt for each of the three female characters, whereas, didn't even really feel that much for the male characters, even the one whose wife was murdered. And yeah, like you said, lots of people in that situation, there are no good options. So I did feel like, as we said, it was done well, and you could at least empathize, if not necessarily like the characters.
yeah, definitely, and agree, and Kate Mara, who is and again, it's that's the first episode, who is the victim to start with in the show, she just had a horrific, upbringing,
Mhm.
so I really sympathized with her too.
Yeah, and wasn't she in Chappaquiddick, or was that Rooney?
Oh, no, I think it was her. Yeah, I don't think she is married Joe she wasn't the one I don't think that was she the one that died? Okay, I don't
I don't
remember now.
remember.
I don't remember, but yeah, I think she was. I don't see her or Rooney in a lot of things, but I like both of them.
Yes, yeah, me too. Yeah, and obviously would recommend Chappaquiddick, the movie.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, who played, do you remember who played Ted? Oh, that's gonna pop into my brain, but
No,
anyway,
I don't remember who played Ted.
yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Anyways, anything I feel like we're talking around still, but again, I feel like people, could get angry if you give everything away, so but yeah, would you recommend it?
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we have so many I don't know how many times I've said this, so many streaming options, so many show options, but, so many of them are stylized, so many of them, they have it, they don't nothing is new. They've just, repackaged, past, are there so many are the same.
Mhm.
So, it was a little different. I liked it. I would recommend it too.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, today we are going back to the 1960s to talk about a troubling missing persons case. Being a woman in 1960s America was less than ideal.
You don't say.
Women earned about half as much as a man doing the same job and were rarely promoted. They couldn't get a credit card unless they were married and only if their husband co signed. This, getting approval from your husband, also applied to birth control. Doctors would only prescribe it to married couples. Marital rape wasn't legally considered rape and wouldn't be for many years. And of course, abortion was illegal. Society dictated that women's sole purpose was to get married and have children. In 1963, Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, which shattered the 1950s mindset that women were completely fulfilled by being wives and mothers and should be able to seek satisfaction in higher education and careers if they wanted. That same year, Gloria Steinem wrote an expose after going undercover at the New York Playboy Club, shining a light on the exploitative conditions that the women that worked there endured. Our story today takes place in Coral Gables, Florida, an upper middle class community less than 30 minutes from Miami. This is where 22-year-old Judith, or Judy Hyams, made her home. After divorcing her investment banker husband in June of 1965, she moved back in with her wealthy parents. Her father was a successful real estate developer, and her mother was a homemaker. Judy worked for the University of Miami Medical School at Jackson Memorial Hospital as a medical technician and had recently begun dating local dentist Lucien Gordon.
In August 1965, suspecting she might be pregnant, Judy made an appointment under the name B. Kenny because this was 1965. She was single, and this was way before at home pregnancy tests were available. With the pregnancy confirmed, Judy had few options. Though she was close with her parents, they were very religious, and she didn't feel like she could tell them about her unplanned pregnancy and her choice to seek out an abortion. Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion, was still 8 years away. Because of our current political climate and the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022, which allowed states to decide if abortion, which is healthcare, was permitted, many states are on track to leave women with fewer rights today than they had 50 years ago. As of May 1st, 2024, Florida has severely restricted a woman's right to choose. Abortion is legal, but only up to 6 weeks gestation, which is calculated from the first day of the last menstrual period. Of course, many women are unaware that they are pregnant within that time frame, which is the whole point. If a woman is fortunate enough to meet that strict timeline, she is still required to jump through several draconian hoops, including a mandatory ultrasound, even if a doctor deems it unnecessary, a mandatory in person counseling session, and a 24-hour waiting period before the procedure can be completed. There are exceptions for rape, incest, or human trafficking, which allow victims up to 15 weeks gestation to get an abortion, provided there is documentation in the form of a police report or restraining order. As we know, many women do not feel safe reporting these incidents, so their options narrow even further. The nearest state to Florida without a punishing abortion ban is Virginia, which is a more than 13-hour drive. So, even though it has been more than 60 years since Judy was faced with a decision many women have faced since the beginning of time, and abortion isn't strictly illegal, women are still dealing with hard decisions and, in many cases, find they have few choices.
On September 13th, Judy went to her bank and withdrew $300. She had dinner with Lucien and was home before 10 p.m. The next morning, she had breakfast with her parents and then drove her rented turquoise Chevy Impala to her job at the hospital because her car had been damaged 6 days earlier by Hurricane Betsy. Judy spoke to her friend Marilyn and told her she was leaving work early to do some shopping and she needed to pay for a watch that she had ordered. The watch had actually already been paid for and was scheduled to be delivered to her house the next day. She did have an appointment to make, though. A friend of Judy's had put her in touch with a doctor who performed abortions, Dr. George Hadju, a Hungarian immigrant who said he was licensed to practice medicine in the U.S.
I'll bet that he was far from the only doctor offering abortions who said he had a license.
I mean, how are women going to verify it? Just say you're a doctor.
Pretty much.
Judy arrived at George's Miami apartment, which was also being used as a makeshift clinic, in the afternoon. After entering the apartment, Judy was never seen again. Her parents knew that their daughter was responsible and considerate and would always tell them if she planned on being home late. So, when Judy didn't return home that evening, they contacted the police and reported her missing. Most likely due to the fact that a wealthy, prominent family was involved, police quickly began their search.
Sadly, that often seems to be a motivating factor.
Unfortunately, it really does. None of Judy's friends knew that she was pregnant. The only people that knew were three doctors. George Hadju, spoiler, he isn't really a doctor,
Didn't see that coming.
Dennis' boyfriend, Lucien, and Herschel Gordon, no relation to Lucien. Herschel, who was a family friend, is the friend that referred Judy to George. As her mother was looking through her daughter's room for any information that may help police locate her, she came across a receipt from a medical lab. This receipt led investigators to the lab where on August 31st, Judy had gone for a pregnancy test. Though she used the fake name of B. Kenny, she had requested that the results of the test be sent to Lucien's office. A technician at the lab told police that she had recognized Judy when she came in for the test because they had gone to school together. The police now knew that Judy was pregnant.
8 days after she went missing and a description of her rental car was broadcast on the radio, Judy's rental car was found 650 miles from Coral Gables in Atlanta, Georgia. The car was parked on Atlantic Drive near the Georgia Tech campus. Police spoke to Nancy Rogers, whose home the car was parked in front of. Nancy said that she saw the car being parked on September 15th and described the driver as being in his 20s with a short, stocky build, a bad complexion with acne scars, and a blonde crew cut. After he parked the car, he grabbed a duffel bag from the trunk and walked away. Investigators examined the car, and a small spot of blood was found in the back seat. A very small amount, what you might expect from a small cut on your finger. Evidence gathering was complicated. First, because this was the 60s and forensic evidence testing wasn't what it is today. And second, because it was a rental car, there were too many fingerprints to yield any usable clues. Police believed that a man going by the name Smith, which they assumed was not his actual name, flew from Atlanta to Miami on the date he parked the car, paying for his airline ticket in cash. This lead, vague as it was, went nowhere. After police confirmed that Judy was pregnant, the three doctors quickly became suspects. Miami attorney Daniel Sepler contacted the state's attorney's office, claiming that two attorneys had asked him for advice on behalf of potential clients who may have been involved in aiding or procuring an illegal abortion. Daniel relayed that this was related to the missing girl and that the two attorneys had received calls from a Dr. Gordon. Both doctors were subpoenaed to appear at the state attorney's office. Lucien was initially uncooperative with investigators and kept canceling appointments. When he finally sat down with them, he said that he only dated Judy casually. He didn't know she was pregnant, and he had not heard from her since their dinner date on September 13th.
Herschel was a friend of the family and doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital. He had been the one to introduce Lucien and Judy, in addition to referring her to George. I hope that he believed that George was a real doctor and that he was licensed in Hungary and just didn't have his credentials in the US, as opposed to thinking because abortion was illegal, the common knowledge was that the only ones willing to perform the procedure were going to be sketchy as hell, and you were literally putting your life in the hands of some unqualified quack. Though those with money were sometimes able to persuade a sympathetic doctor to perform the abortion, a clean, sterile environment with all necessary equipment in case of complications was all but non existent.
So, while women from a privileged background had a better chance of survival, overall, the standard of care was still pretty freaking low.
That's right. After being questioned, ignoring the fact that they were friends and lacking a conscience, he refused to speak to the Hyams family and moved to California months after Judy's disappearance.
Nice.
Yeah. Though he was not licensed to practice in the US and his Hungarian credentials were unclear, George had worked as a doctor in Alabama and Georgia, apparently because his qualifications or lack thereof were not verified. Florida police, though, were onto his questionable practices, and after months of surveillance, he was arrested in Miami in 1964. He had been preparing to perform an abortion in the back room of a house that someone allowed him to use for this purpose. George had a less than reputable history. The previous year, he had been charged with conspiracy to commit abortion following a sting operation in which an undercover female police officer arranged to have an abortion for $500. He was also charged with unlawful practice of medicine after it was discovered he did not have a license to practice in the U.S. George insisted that he did have a medical license in his native Hungary. These arrests didn't change his behavior in any way. In 1965, he was convicted of unlawful practice of medicine. When police questioned him regarding Judy's disappearance, he denied knowing her or performing her abortion. After continually being pressed, he did acknowledge that he knew her when she was working as a medical technician at Mount Sinai in 1962. In May 1966, George, along with a young nurse named Donna Doohan and a third defendant, J. Anderson Martin, were arrested for their role in an unrelated abortion case, but they were released.
In late 1966, after being monitored by police for months, George was finally arrested and charged with perjury, impersonating a physician, and performing illegal abortions. But the chief suspect in Judy's disappearance simply paid his bail, walked out of the jail, and was never seen again. Authorities presume he flew back to his native Hungary. With no George and no other leads regarding what happened to Judy, the case quickly went cold. Investigators from the Miami-Dade Police Department had surveyed George through their special abortion squad. These abortion squads were active in many large U.S. cities and were able to bring down a number of illegal abortion rings. Many investigators began not with surveillance, but with hospital admissions. Unfortunately, when women were admitted to the hospital with what were perceived as botched abortion injuries, the hospital was required to notify the police under the guise of locating and stopping the people who were performing these abortions. But if you think women weren't shamed in the process, you'd be wrong. The police attempted to get the name of these abortionists so that they could be arrested and hopefully prosecuted. But punishing women was also often the goal. Women were pressured and sometimes threatened with prosecution to force them to identify the individuals who performed the procedures. Of course, many women were scared of being exposed themselves and were unwilling to name names. In addition to visits to hospitals to question scared patients, police would set up surveillance watching a supposed abortion provider, and when they had enough evidence, they would arrest the abortionist. That's all fine and good. Many people that provided abortions were vile humans with zero medical training and no clue what they were doing. However, these police squads also went after legitimate doctors who were providing a much needed service. Because, shockingly enough, criminalization did not eliminate demand.
Detectives would also pose as patients or boyfriends to catch doctors or underground providers in the act. Underground clinics were raided, and the primary targets were the providers, but if women were present, they were also arrested.
Because arresting desperate women will obviously solve the situation.
I mean, I don't think they had any sympathy for the women.
Probably not.
Border Patrol agents in states like Texas and California that bordered Mexico interrogated women who were traveling to Mexico for medical care, searching for any wayward women trying to take charge of their reproductive rights. In 1967, 2 years after Judy's disappearance, Lucian finally revealed everything he knew about the disappearance. He admitted that he went with Judy to George's apartment 4 days before she disappeared, where she made an appointment for September 14th. George said the cost of the procedure would be $300. When Judy asked if she needed someone to drive her home after the procedure, George said that she would be able to drive herself. Consequently, Lucian didn't escort Judy to the appointment. Police were confident that Judy died during the abortion. The case was closed, and she was declared dead 7 years later. Marilyn, a friend of Judy's who she spoke to on the afternoon she disappeared, said she believed that Judy didn't die due to complications because she had extensive medical knowledge. No shade to Marilyn, but medical knowledge or not, if something went wrong during the procedure and she was unable to get herself to a real doctor, she could have easily died.
Yeah, I mean, if she was seriously injured, she might not have been physically capable of saving herself, regardless of if she knew how.
That's so true. The true number of fatalities from abortions during this time period is unknown because they were illegal. Deaths from crudely performed abortions were often cited as hemorrhaging or an infection. In 1990, the investigation into Judy's disappearance was reopened after a series of peculiar events. Coral Gables police captain Charles Shira gave a narcotics lecture at a Nebraska police academy in Grand Island, about 150 miles from Omaha. He made no mention of Judy's case while he was there, as he knew nothing about it, but he did hand out a number of business cards during his 3 day stay. Nothing was out of the ordinary about the lecture, and Captain Shira returned home. About 2 weeks after he returned home, he received an odd phone call. A man claiming to be Steve Brown, a radio host in Omaha, said that he had received an anonymous call from a man who said he had information about Judy's disappearance. Captain Shira, unfamiliar with the 25-year-old case, said he would familiarize himself with the case and call him back.
True to his word, the next day, Captain Shearer called the number he had been given and reached a surprised and confused Steve Brown. The real Steve said he knew nothing about the case and had not been the one to call the captain. More confounding, the number fake Steve gave was the private, unlisted home number of real Steve, who said only about 50 people even had the number. Captain Shira was baffled. He knew nothing about the case and certainly didn't mention it at the Omaha lecture. Bizarrely, the captain received another strange call from an unnamed female who said, Judy Hyams is alive and she lives in Omaha. He asked if she could give him any more information, but the caller simply repeated the cryptic words and then hung up. Was Judy alive? The captain thought it was possible. In March 1990, a local Florida newspaper ran an article about Judy's disappearance. After the article came out, Captain Shira received a final phone call regarding the case. This time, the caller was a man claiming to be an FBI informant. He refused to give his name, but Captain Shira didn't believe he was the man who had made the first phone call pretending to be Steve Brown. This alleged informant claimed he had recently been with Dr. Hadju in Budapest, Hungary, and gave Captain Shira George's phone number. The captain contacted Interpol, and the phone number did belong to someone with the same name. Unfortunately, fake fugitive Dr. George was still in the wind. He has never been located and is likely deceased. Regarding the odd phone calls, police don't have an explanation and surmise that the calls were a cruel prank. A 1989 article regarding several missing persons mentioned Judy. The article was syndicated to newspapers around the country. It's likely that some inconsiderate degenerates with too much time on their hands saw the article and, in a time before caller ID, thought making these calls would be a good use of their time. What happened to Judy? Most people believe that Judy died at the hands of fake Dr. George. Unfortunately, and to the detriment to and death of many women, the majority of people that performed illegal abortions were not doctors, had zero training, and had no clue what to do when things went wrong. These profiteers were concerned about keeping their business going and were unlikely to risk seeking genuine medical treatment for a botched abortion. To that end, if Judy died, her body was likely dumped where it wouldn't be found. There is also the possibility that the man who left Judy's rental car in Atlanta had something to do with her disappearance. The eyewitness that saw him gave a generic description, and law enforcement were never able to identify him. Other hopeful but likely naive people speculated that Judy disappeared voluntarily because of the social stigma around abortion. Friends and family didn't find this plausible, especially since she had received a $25,000 settlement from her divorce and the money remained untouched in her bank account.
On January 6, 1991, 4 days after the OG true crime show Unsolved Mysteries aired a segment on Judy's case, the Coral Gables Police Department received an anonymous typewritten letter stating, Judy Hyams is not alive. She came in for an abortion and was given an injection of anesthesia, to which she had an immediate allergic reaction. Everything that could be done was done, but the reaction was fatal. The body was disposed of in Biscayne Bay. Police believed the letter was legitimate, but were unable to corroborate it. Unsolved Mysteries did air an update after police received the letter. Law enforcement urged the letter writer to come forward as the statute of limitations had expired. They advised that there would be no criminal prosecution for any involvement in Judy's disappearance, and they would guarantee confidentiality. The writer never came forward. Police again closed their investigation. The case is still technically unsolved. Judy's body has never been found. For my 2 cents, I don't believe Lucien or Herschel were directly involved in what happened to Judy, though I think they may have been involved in trying to redirect the investigation into her disappearance. I think Lucien took his new girlfriend, who was inconveniently pregnant, to someone posing as a doctor to take care of it. I do think he could have taken the afternoon off to drive her to the appointment and also could have chipped in for the cost. But I think that is the extent of his involvement. As for Herschel, I believe Judy asked if he knew any doctors that performed abortions and he put her in touch with George. I hope, again, he believes that George was a real doctor. As for not talking to her parents or giving them any information and then escaping to California shortly after her disappearance, I mean, that was a real shit thing to do.
Mhm.
I do, I do wonder who paid Smith to drive Judy's car to Atlanta. I'm guessing he was paid to drive and abandon the car along with receiving cash to buy an airline ticket back to Florida. I think all the blame should be placed squarely on George. I believe Judy died during his unskilled abortion and he dumped her body, possibly with help from someone that helped him with his busy, burgeoning practice. I imagine he called Herschel and told him what happened, and Herschel and Lucian paid someone to drive and abandon Judy's car in Atlanta. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's the most likely scenario. I wouldn't say Lucian was a stand up guy, but I don't think he had a hand in Judy's death. And if Herschel was involved, it was likely after Judy died, presumably due to George's carelessness and or the unsafe conditions of illegal abortions.
It looks like Herschel Gordon is still alive and living in California. George Hadju has never been located. Radio host Steve Brown died in 2008. Captain Chira passed away in 2014, and Dr. Lucien Gordon died in 2020. Unfortunately, I think this was a senseless tragedy, and Judy died at the hands of an unskilled provider. It isn't hard to imagine that in our current political climate, we will again find ourselves seeing an increase in desperate women seeking unsafe, illegal abortions. Next time, we'll be discussing the case of Gary Davis.
All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case for us to discuss, you can email us at culpritpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at culpritthepod on Instagram and at culpritpodcast on TikTok. Feel free to leave us a comment, rating, or review to let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you soon.